Hey guys, Art Decline here, Average Picker. So I actually meant to do this video like 3 months ago, and I just didn't do it. But since we're kind of on the heels of having picked that Chinese lock with the construction key, I thought we'd take a look at construction keying. Because it's, when you're a new picker, eventually somewhere probably within the first 3 locks you take apart, you will eventually notice these little tiny balls fall out, and they go across your floor or whatever. You never see them again. They're not that important, but you undoubtedly hop on the Discord or a chat or a forum or the subreddit or something, and you go, what are these little balls that fell out? Or you don't spot them falling out at all, and you just ask about what these little holes are, and someone tells you that's for construction keying. And it sort of makes sense, but you don't really think about it, and it sort of doesn't make sense to you at the same time. And for challenge lock building, we always well, not always, but we tend to fill those in, so we don't really want them. But yeah, so I just thought we'd do a little quick look at construction keying.
So there are different ways to do this, and as far as I know, this is the more popular method, and I believe it's sometimes referred to as the lost ball technique. But you basically have these little tiny ball bearings, and I'm telling you guys, these things are teeny, teeny, tiny. And this is 3 of them. And what they are designed to do is to fall into these holes. Now, what they tend to do is you have a pin in here, and you have 3 or 4 in this kind of arrangement, actually in one of these chambers. Though I have opened some cylinders up and had them in more than one. But it's basically you put 3 or 4 ball bearings to a single chamber. And then those ball bearings are designed to eventually ride and fall into one of the construction holes. And you can almost think of this as master keying, sort of, only in the sense that you're creating 2 shear lines, and one of the keys kind of then ends up destroying the system. You can see just how teeny tiny these guys are. In fact, just in putting this video together, I dropped one while picking it up, no idea where it went, and another one fell down somewhere in between, actually got in between the rubber on the back end of this mat. So there's now a construction bearing in there. So if we have an imaginary lock, and this imaginary lock only has 1 chamber in it, right? Because this is going to, keeping it very simple here. So let's say it only has 1 chamber in it. Well, what we do is we put the construction bearings into one of those chambers, and then that creates our 2 shear lines. Now, what you want is the construction key has to always work until the homeowner's key is used. And that homeowner's key is, it's referred to under different names. I've seen it called the change key, I think. I've seen it called something else too. It was a little anti-intuitive. I'm going to call it the homeowner's key. That's what you're kind of probably familiar with. So, your constructor people, they use the 1 key while they're building the house or whatever, and it's just always going to this shear line. Then they finish the house and turn it over to you, and you put your key in and you rotate the thing around, and it rotates to this shear line. And that causes, as we were just showing, those little ball bearings to drop down into there. Some other versions don't actually use construction holes. The ball bearings are just designed to somehow fall through and fall out of the lock or whatever and just be on the ground. So if we just review for a moment the relationship between the key and our key pins, remember, if we have more material on the key, then we need a shorter key pin, and if we have less material on the key, then we need a longer key pin, because that key is just making up the difference for the key pin to the shear line. And so when we have less material, we have a deeper cut, and when we have more material on the key, we have one of these shallower cuts. So we can think of the construction bearings as basically just making a longer key pin, which means we're going to need a deeper cut on our key, and our homeowner key has to be able to get those ball bearings up into the housing, so that when the core turns, they can drop down. So we're going to have a shorter and it's shorter key pin. So it's gonna be for the homeowner's key a higher cut on it to push that up. So on our single chamber key, if we think of our key as having 6 possible cuts on it, what it would mean is our deeper cut is going to be the construction, and our homeowner is going to have a higher cut. Well, in other words, it's going to be something like this, poorly drawn. This is our bit of our key. That would be our construction shear line, and this would be our homeowner's shear line. So you can see it's sort of like a destructive master keying system, where you've got one key and it works for a while until you basically use your other key to destroy the system. And what they'll often do is in development areas, you'll have multiple houses, right? Let's draw some houses here. And you'll have your constructor key, or your construction key will actually potentially work on all 3 of these or more. Right now, this starts to beg a couple questions to me. But now, one of the things that's nice about this relationship and how this works is it's hard to add material to a key, right? And so you don't have to worry about, the constructor key is not something you can just file down a little bit more and produce the homeowner key with. You'd actually have to build that key up.
Now, like I said, from a picking standpoint, this is not much of a thing for us. It's just one of those things that's, kind of try to understand. And from a challenge lock building standpoint, unless we're using those construction holes as like, a pin trap or something, we generally don't want these. We'll generally fill these in with something. But it is similar to a master keying system. And so here's what I'm starting to wonder. We've got key impressioning. And I think everybody probably watching this channel knows what key impressioning is. If you're so new that you don't know what key impressioning is, you should check it out. It's actually pretty cool. And we know there's ways to decode what the master keying system for a building or something could be. And so not thinking of this anymore as construction thing, thinking of it more along the lines of master keying, I've started to wonder, has anyone done anything? I'm sure somebody has to have tried as far as building up a key. It's very hard to add material. Obviously you can't. But I started wondering if maybe you couldn't, use some type of resin or epoxy maybe, and just do little coats and dabs along it, letting it dry, just to build it up the notch or two that it would need to go to hit those other shear lines. We have it, and not just in master keying. You've also got with those other locks, where you've got to the control and operating shear lines. Vests are really known for that kind of. But yeah, I started wondering if it wouldn't be possible to do that. The other thing I started wondering about is, because I did talk to a guy who does development, and he's had up to like 20 houses, I think, or something. Really big subdivisions, too, that have been construction keyed. And that got me wondering, how much difference is there between the neighbors' keys? I've taken some of these apart, and I've taken quite a few apart, but I've generally only ever seen construction bearings, for the most part, in one chamber. I have come across them in multiple chambers before, and you can see this one is set up. You could, I guess, technically do up to 4, but like Schlage and all these companies, they have charts and things that correspond and tell you where, depending on what your other cuts are, to put those construction ones in those. But I have seen them in multiple chambers. But yeah, that really got me wondering how similar, like if you get into a large development of 10, 15, 20, 40 houses, especially where they've come in and they've clear cut everything at one time and they're doing all the construction at once, how much difference is there really between all those neighbors' keys? And it doesn't really seem like something you can necessarily go over and ask once people started moving in. Hey, can I see your key? I want to compare it to your neighbor's because I'm interested in lock picking. That's sketchy as hell to go up and ask somebody that. You have to have a pretty good relationship with a few people to get a look at that. So yeah, that's kind of my question on is how different could some of these keys really be in these subdivisions? And have any of you tried actually building a key up, adding material on it to get to something like, say, a master key and shear line or something like that? Might be an interesting experiment to try. I don't know if I have the patience to sit and do like a single dab, of glue or something and sit and let it dry and then keep going from there. So yeah, just something to think about. All right, guys, have a good one.